If you follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page, you know that yoga is a huge part of my life and how much I absolutely adore the studio that I teach at here in Delray Beach, Florida. Dandy Light Studio and Bistro offer so many different types of classes and experience for every level of yogi. They also have incredible workshops going on all the time, like sound baths, Reiki, acro yoga, and more. The Bistro is filled with homemade treats by the studio's owner and authentic French pastries from Delray's top-rated bakery, Maison Bouchard. All of the boutique goodies will definitely raise your vibration. Candles, sage, clothing made from all sustainable fashion lines, and so much more. This gem is like a mecca for your soul. Located right next to Pineapple Grove in the heart of downtown Delray Beach, head into Dandylight for some respite from the ruckus. Go to dandylight.com and follow them on Instagram at dandylight_studio to sign up for one of their amazing classes. Welcome to Resume the Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Page, and I'm here to spread the message that you can, in fact, be happy in your career. I'm a former executive recruiter turned career coach, and I am obsessed with learning about why people have chosen their career, what led them to that decision, and how they achieved happiness in the process. So, come join the ongoing conversation that exposes you to career paths of all origins with one thing in common: happiness. So, press play and let's resume the conversation with this week's episode. Our guest today on Resume the Podcast is Jamie Sylvian. Jamie spearheaded the digital nomad movement and has been traveling the world closing multi-million-dollar deals since 1991, way before the jet-setting lifestyle that we see on Instagram was ever a thing. He doesn't own a car or flashy washes, but he does million-dollar deals from the beach. And now he teaches people over 40 how to become a highly paid executive nomad and is the founder of the Executive Nomad Academy. And he teaches for free people who want to set up a location-independent business, making great money and living anywhere they choose, full-time, part-time, or just passing through. I love it, Jamie. Thank you so much for being here. And we were just talking a bit before we started. Where are you right now?
So I'm in Bulgaria. I have an office and an apartment in Bulgaria, which was I've had it here since 2004. And this is where I usually come for the winter for the skiing. It's actually in a ski resort, which is a huge digital nomad space now. So, but I come here for the height of the summer and the height of the winter. And I've just literally traveled in today from Greece.
Where in Greece?
I went to Kavala first. So I spent a couple of weeks down in Kavala, which is a port town, and then Kablaka, which is a huge lake, which is where I've been for the last couple of days.
Nice.
It's just a nature reserve. And there's a lovely little hotel there. And I was doing some writing, so I just wanted to get away from all the traffic and everything else. That was really nice.
Mm-hmm. I just want to kind of lay a little bit of foundation of like who you are and how you ended up in Bulgaria doing this. So where are you from originally?
So I'm from London.
Okay, great. And so to start off, I like to ask everybody, if you were at a dinner party and people didn't know you and you were just shooting the shit with people and someone asked you, what do you do? What would your response be?
So I have an online, totally aligned consultancy, and I help companies to raise capital for their business.
Okay, great. And when you were a kid in London, what did you want to be when you grew up?
What a great question. Probably everything. A writer, actually. I know what I became a writer for a long time. So yeah, I was very much into that. I was pretty terrible at school, but the only thing I was good at was writing.
Okay.
So that was always a thing, an ambition of mine.
Okay. And how did you discover writing? Like, where did that interest come from?
So I had a company in London when I was very young, and I had to do all of the marketing writing for it because I didn't know anyone else to do it. So the bit that I enjoyed the absolute most, this was when I was 16, 17, the bit I enjoyed the most was doing the writing. And then I did that for a while, and then I gave up doing that. So I sort of grew up and grew into other parts of the business. But then when I sold a company in 1992, I took a year out and went and studied copywriting, and I became quite good at copywriting. And I did it for about 10 years in the financial space.
Okay, great. Okay, so that was my next question, because you do a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just from my research and whatnot, it sounds like you do a lot of mergers and acquisitions and you're in the financial space. So can you give us a little bit of background on how you ended up there?
Yeah, for sure. So I found myself, strangely, a financial copywriter. So I work for a lot of American companies, Agora and International Man, a lot of the companies that were doing financial magazines, financial publications, and I would write their sales copy. But what that led me into was a lot building up a network of people in the finance space. So I got to meet a lot of investors, capital managers, marketers in that space. I did a lot of work with family wealth offices. So these are the companies that run the investments for wealthy families. So I just started to build up that network and slowly moved into doing marketing for companies and writing theses and project documents for companies who are looking to raise capital. So I kind of transitioned slowly into it. And then there's a lot more money in doing what I do in raising the extra capital because of the network that I've built up than there was in just doing copywriting. So I found it just a much easier thing to do. Given my lifestyle, I don't want to be in one place for too long for any length of time.
Which I also want to get to, because I think a lot of people feel that way. Going back, so you were 16, 17 doing this business. I'm always curious to know when people are like high achievers and doing something really unique. What were your influences? Did you have any external expectations placed on you from your parents or teachers or anything like that? What was the household like? What did your parents do? Like, where did this entrepreneurship come from and the adventure spirit come from?
So it actually came from my uncle. My dad was an engineer and he's pretty stuck in his ways. You know, my family are Irish, but they all kind of got jobs in engineering and surveying and that kind of stuff. But on my mother's side, I had two uncles. One who was a writer. He encouraged me to do that side of things. And the other one ran his own businesses. And he was always the uncle who had the nicer car and the bigger house. So that's kind of gravitated towards him. But my uncle, who was the writer, was the cool one. He was like, it was fun. And that's kind of, I think that influenced me a lot. My mother saw me as very creative, but she pushed me that way. So I went to art college and I didn't find my place in any of those because I didn't really know that I would be a good writer. But I kind of found myself with creative people, and that was a huge influence too. But I also like business. I like the challenge of business. So it was a good mix for me.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I think there are a lot of creative people who have a difficult time combining those skills or infiltrating that creative energy into business and learning and navigating that road. How were you able to do that at the beginning when you kind of realize I'm creative, I like to write, I have the fun uncle that I really relate to? How were you able to permeate the business worlds in a way that was not soul sucking?
Well, I mean, I always positioned myself as a freelancer. I never went for a job for a company. So I always had the freedom. And every now and again, even moving around since 1991, I would find myself back in London doing a project that would be 3, 4, 5, 6 months and so on. And anytime I did that and I stayed in that environment too long, I found that I'm not built for the corporate world. I kind of need to have my own freedom. I'm very disciplined. I'm very structured in what I do, but I also need the freedom. I need the creativity to be able to look at a problem and say, well, this is how I deal with it. And that led me to always doing the marketing. Work would go out to a marketing agency, would come back and I would think, that's not the story we're looking to tell. So I would end up doing that. But I found it was great. And it's still my favorite thing. When I'm sitting down now on a project for a business, is to clear my mind, just to sit down and work out exactly how to tell the story of that business so that they are a good hit for a capital raise. So it's a nice mix to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's storytelling at its core.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. So so it's 1991, and forgive me if this is like too much of a pry, but I'm always curious to know how old people are when they make these like big decisions. So in 1991, we had the internet. We're clearly not as connected as we are now. The digital nomad movement was definitely not a thing. How old were you when you were like, I can do this and I'm going to go make my own thing happen?
The movement actually existed.
Okay.
But it was in a very different format, obviously, than it is now. But so I was down in Exeter in the UK working on a project. I was 23. I'd already gone through a period of doing a bit of traveling. People who age usually do ours. I was working on a project down in Exeter, and I was in a service office address there, and I was sitting in the reception, and on the table there was a magazine, just a paper magazine, sort of a newsletter, if you like, set through the post, called the Mouse Monitor. Had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it, and I picked it up as I went to meet somebody, started flicking through it, and everything about it was exactly what the digital nomad movement is now. It was based on a thing called the Six Flags theory. It's where you have your company in one place, you have your bank accounts in another place, your playground where you actually spend your time in another place. And it's all about tax planning and freedom and the ability to travel. But the ironic thing was there, although it was about it's called Perpetual Traveler at the time. It's by the movement was by a guy called W.G. Hill. And actually, on the back of my office here, I still have all his books that I bought back then. They travel the world with me. They're no good now, legally or in the auto, but they kind of tell me where I started. So I got excited about the idea of it. I got the irony that you're supposed to be able to live anywhere, and yet you had to have an address for them to send the newsletters. But that was the nature of what it was back then. So I started to read the book, started to get into it, and I realized it's actually a really different way of life. And then that's when I started to look for business that I could take with me. What could you do at that time? Writing was kind of one of the main ones that you could do, because quite literally you just get a pad and paper and a fax machine at the time. So I actually went straight from Exeter to live in Spain for a few years. I actually lived there for 2.5 years. I wanted to learn Spanish. A lot of my youth was spent in Spain. So I just went over there and I started from a fax machine. It was me and a fax machine, and I was running my first writing.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing.
It was normal at the time.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking when was the last time I used a fax machine? And you answered one of my questions. I was interested to know where was the first place you went? And it was Spain, because you spent a lot of time in Spain. What was it about travel? What prompted you to have this idea? You said that you didn't like the corporate lifestyle. Were you interested in travel for the adventure aspect of it? A curiosity of just different cultures? Or was it simply a restlessness that you didn't like being in one place for a long period of time?
I think it was a mix of the three. But even then, back in the UK, even then I would travel all over the UK with the business that I was running at the time, which was a consulting-based business, what I do now, but it was for local authorities within the government. So I would spend 3 weeks in the north of England and then move down for 2 weeks into the middle of the UK and so on. I'd move around a lot anyway. So it's really just an extension of that. It was just the ability to to step out further and further. And once I'd done it, once I stepped away from the UK, then there was no looking back for me. I thought it was, as long as you can work out how to do it and how to make money while you do it, and it's a lot easier now than it used to be. I just had the bug. But in terms of the culture thing, to cover that point, I would never go and stay in hotels. I would always go and stay where all the locals are. That was always my thing. I've lived all over the world, but I've always made sure that I'm just immersed in that culture of wherever I happen to be.
Yeah. And how has it changed now that the world has opened up? There's a lot more connectivity. What are the positives and negatives to that?
Gosh, it's so much easier now. It everywhere, actually. It took me months back then to even get a bank account, because they wanted to know where I was living or so. Now you have wise.com, which I've set up a bank account. So all I run my business through is Wise. I have people who work, freelancers who work with me in India. I can pay them if I owe them $150 today for some work they did to me, they're paid and they've got their money in 15 minutes. My company has been registered for many years in Gibraltar, just beside Spain. That's why I chose that. But that gives me the ability to trade internationally, to recognize jurisdiction. Banking is easier. Company formation is easier. Managing the company, all of my accounts are done online. That's much easier. Nearly all of my business is done on WhatsApp. So I don't have the expense of, again, which I did a few years ago, traveling around with a mobile phone or a smartphone. It was great, but it was expensive. Now it doesn't cost anything. Mm-hmm. We had Zoom that we used, but I also have another video platform that I put together that basically runs my entire business is run from that one platform. So it's much, much easier to do now. And actually, since COVID, what was always interesting, because I'm in the finance space, but I deal with lots of companies in the US, lots of companies in the UK and Europe. People used to always ask, where are you? And I explain where I am, wherever I happen to be at the time. Since COVID, I've never been asked where I am. No, because everybody's somewhere and nobody expects you anymore to be in an office. So that little barrier that was there has completely gone. No, as long as you have the right infrastructure, everything's there, and you can have this kind of a conversation. Nobody wants where you offer business now, which is great, which it really suits me well.
Yeah, it is interesting. You're just doing it on a much more macro scale, but it's just the same idea as working from home now. Like, people don't really care.
Yeah.
I know that there is like a bit of a tug of war happening with companies do want people to come back in, and employees are like, why? No, I don't want to do that. So they're working that out. But for the most part, a lot of people don't care if you're working from home or if you're in an office or what, just so long as you can kind of get it done in the time allotted. Yeah. And you were just doing that before. So what skills of yours have been the most valuable in terms of your success with deal making, closing deals and all of that while on the road, while traveling?
I think there's an irony in the fact that I'm in the finance business because I'm terrible with a spreadsheet. So
that is weird.
Yeah. So my business is entirely built around relationships building, because the number side of what I do, raising capital for a company. So just give you a quick overview. A company, they're in as an example, a project I'm working on at the moment, they're in the tech space. They have a tech-based company. They have offices in India, and they're in the logistics space, and offices in America. And so it's a great business and they are going well, but all of those kinds of businesses reach a point where they can't grow because they don't have the money to grow. Mm-hmm. So that part of it, the actual raising of the capital, is tick box. It's what are their revenues? What is their profitability? Who are their customers? It's a tick box exercise. So I don't have to be involved in that. So when I meet a customer, and I do my outreach on LinkedIn or email or whatever it does, and I start having those conversations, it's about the relationship that I develop with the founder of that company. Because then I move that across to, I like their business, I like what they do, I feel from my experience that this is something that I know somebody who would be interested in being invested into their business. I pass them across to the network that I work with, and they have all the numbers. The value that I have is that, A, I know my business, of course, but B, is that I build relationships and I can have a conversation in an environment like this with you, Courtney. I'd be having a conversation just like this with the client. And in the back of my mind, as they're telling me about their business, I think I know who they could be talking to raise that capital. Mm-hmm. So I'm the connector. I'm the network builder. So I know the people on both sides. But as I said, in terms of capital, in terms of being a financier, not me. I'm just all about relationships.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I'm thinking, as you were talking, I'm thinking everybody's told in school, network, go to these networking events and all of that. And it's interesting because you kind of just took that to the next level and you're like, I'm going to be the conference that people go to. I am the walking conference and I will connect you. Yeah. So that's such an interesting grab on that. And how long were you, before you forayed out of the UK, while you were building up your foundation network in the UK, how long were you there before you left and decided to go to Spain?
Well, I came and went for a long time because there was still opportunities in the UK as much as there were anywhere else. So I left for good in 92, 93. And then I considered myself out of the UK. I went back to the UK for the last half of 97 and 98, where I actually ended up doing a deal with members of the British Royal Family, who set up a marketing company. So I was using my marketing skills to help them develop that business. So they were the main investors in the company. So I ended up staying in the UK for a while. The reason I stayed in the UK for a while is because there was enough money in that deal for me to buy an apartment in Spain, and then I was really gone. So, it's all strategic. But since then I've moved around. I've lived in 11 countries, what I would consider full time, right across the world, and obviously travel all over the world still.
Do you ever go back to the same country, or do you make it a point to go to different places that you haven't been?
I spend a lot of time in Greece.
Okay.
I've spent 4.5 years in Thailand. I lived in Hong Kong. Thailand I really enjoyed. I think it's a nomad problem is that you go to a beautiful place like Thailand, it's exactly the same. You're doing deals. The problem is if I'm doing deals in America, the time zones are absolutely awful. So I might be doing a meeting at 2:00 in the morning. That's always fine when you start, and then it starts to get a bit tricky. So now living in Europe, back in Europe, I spend my American calls are in the afternoon. through to the evening. But most people are quite accommodating. I tell them I'm in Europe, so it'll be their morning, US, and my late afternoon. I like that time. That works for me, that time. So it gives me time during the day to do whatever I want to do. I do 2 or 3 calls in an afternoon. And that may be for a deal call, and maybe a new call, so somebody would be coming through, or maybe part of the digital nomad, the community that I'm building, maybe one of those calls. So that works for me very well.
That's interesting. Yeah. Have you been to a place that really surprised you? Like you got there and you were like, wow, this is totally not what I was expecting.
I was in Macedonia a month ago, and I was absolutely shocked because Macedonia and Greece have had these issues for hundreds of years. So they used to be the same country. So I expected it to be Greek. It's also adjacent to Bulgaria. It's on the borders. So I expected it to be a big Bulgarian influence. I got there, and I was living in Istanbul last year for a while. Macedonia is a tiny country that is like a mini Istanbul. And it's nowhere near Istanbul. It's nowhere near Turkey. It's fascinating. The whole culture, everything they do, their music, everything has somehow kept its, maybe from when it's part of the Ottoman Empire. But you go there and you could honestly be in Istanbul. It's nowhere near it. It was fascinating to me that the culture is so similar.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. Is there a place that you haven't been that you want to go next?
So I'm heading to Romania for the end of the year. And I also want to go to Bucharest at the end of the year as well, to spend some time there. So just to see what they're like.
Yeah. And I want to go into the academy that you started, the Digital Executive Academy. Can you tell us about that and where that idea, I mean, obviously that idea came from, you have done this, so of course you can spread the knowledge, but what made you want to show people how to do it?
It's Executive Nomad Academy. I had this realization. I was in Greece at the end of May, and I met a guy, a couple. I was actually talking. I was having a deal call at a bar in Greece, and I was having a conversation. And after the conversation with my client, I started talking to a guy at the bar, and he was in his early 50s. He'd been in the executive job all his life. He was completely burnt out, and that's why he'd gone with his wife to near Malaris, it's called in Greece. And he just said, I needed to get away. So we had this conversation, and we started discussing what we do. And he said to me, I'd absolutely love to do what you do. He's just been sitting there with a coffee, overlooking the beach, having a conversation about a high-level deal. It's an American deal I'm putting together in the energy space. So one company's buying another company. I'm helping them to raise capital to do it. And I've been thinking about this idea of showing other people and how this works. And I've also worked with a lot of younger people in the deal space who I found there was a lot of shiny toy. They're always moving on to the next thing. And you can't really do that in this sector. You've got to focus. You've got to get your network. You've got to get to know people on both sides, your client side and your supplier side. And as I had the conversation with this guy over the next few days, I was just there to relax myself. The deals come with me on my laptop, but I was just walking around. I thought, this is actually a nice time in my life to start to think, how do you show people? Because I think we're at a stage in America, in the UK, in Europe, the world's changed since COVID, and people are waking up to other opportunities. But the other thing, the conversation with this guy is saying, no, I couldn't really do it. How do you have conversations? And it's all second nature to me. I just jumped on a Zoom call. Oh, how does that work? And he started asking me all these questions. And the more he asked questions, Ben, I thought, it's actually second nature to me, but not to other people. And there is a real viability here. Anybody can do what I do once they know how to do it. And there's a good reason for people to do that, because people are burnt out. Conversation with him, and I've had lots since. People are burnt out from living in the body, and things are changing. And I think when you're 40 plus, 40, 50, 60, whatever it is, you also you've got the life experience and the sector experience to present yourself to. If you come from the engineering space, you come from the design space, to move across to an online consulting world is kind of a nice transition, because you've already got that life history. It's tougher to do that in 21.
Yeah. And you just answered a question that I had, because as I was preparing, I was wondering why you were focusing on the over 40 population. And it's so true. And it's interesting because I was just talking to somebody, he's a coach, and he focuses on job hunts for people that are 50 plus, right? And it's very interesting because I think when you get to that point, there's this feeling of like the younger generation is moving up and they have more energy and all of this. And there's a bit of a confidence low. And in reality, you're the expert now and you have all of this experience. And like you said, all of the stuff that you've been doing is second nature to you. But to the person that it literally is sitting next to you at that bar, at a random bar in Greece, like what's the line from Casablanca? Like of all the gin joints, right? It's like to them, this is like a totally new mindset, and all of these skills and all of the strategies and how you scale and all of that is totally foreign. Thank you for bringing it up, because I think it's such a good reminder to people that your skills that do come second nature, you can teach those. They are not second nature to someone else, and they can be really valuable. And it doesn't have to come from a place of ego or anything like that. It's just, this is what I'm good at. You're good at something else. Let's show each other almost. So yeah, that is very interesting. How has it been going it's a relatively new foray for you. So just interested to know, like, what has the feedback been and how have you been able to develop it?
So it's new, but 30 years in the making. That's the way I position it. We did a campaign, a PR campaign, and we got picked up by nearly 500 periodicals around the world, online magazines. Fox News picked it up, the magazines in Washington. So there's a lot of interest. We're starting to get a lot of interest from podcasts. I'm kind of at the stage where I think I really want to learn from the people who want to come and do it. Just in sort of a quick backtrack on the point you were making a few moments ago, is that the value that people bring to this when they're 40 plus, as say 40, 50, 60, 70, that bit doesn't really matter. The value, I mentioned that my value to my clients is my experience, my life experience. And I think it's a huge value when you jump on a call like this and you do have those life experiences, because of the nature of what the purpose of the call is. It's about finance. It's the founder of a company, and that's his passion, that's his life. He would feel less comfortable talking to a 20-year-old about raising 10, 20, $30 million for his business. He's much more comfortable raising money through somebody who understands it. So the only difference and the only kind of trajectory people have come, regardless of where they are right now, your listeners, your viewers, regardless of where they're coming out from now, the only trajectory is what you're actually offering as the end result, which is the finance. And that bit you can learn. That bit is all about, I know who to talk to, because within Executive Nomad, we're building a community. That's a case of going into the community and saying, I've just been speaking to a guy in the agri-tech world. He's got this great new product and he's already got some traction. He wants to raise $20 million. Does anyone know who I should be talking to? That's the value of the community to me. And I just feel it's a much better spot for older people to be in, who are not looking to set the world alight. Let's face it, when you're 20, you want to rule the world. I think the right people for Executive Nomad, the right people who are the right fit for it, are people who don't want to do that now. They want to drop down a few years. They don't need the corporate lifestyle. They don't need the commute to work, but they still need the money. They still need the stability of the cash. And there's more than enough cash in a business like this. It's a $7 trillion industry. There's more than enough going out. And you don't need a lot of deals per year. I think this is the really important bit for me, is that I only go after 3 to 5 large-scale deals per year, because they pay enough for me to be able to live the life that I want to. I don't want to be stuck in calls all day. I love doing the deals. I really enjoy it, but I also don't want to be stuck doing that all the time. So I think all of the balances tended to work out better for older people than it would for young.
Yeah, that's interesting. How long do deals typically take you? So if you do 3 to 5 a year, like how long is it? Like a month?
It takes 90 days.
90 days. Oh, wow. You got it down to the days. Got it. And you mentioned something also that I wanted to ask. So you're traveling around and you have this kind of inherently disconnected from normal lifestyle. How do you actually disconnect though? Because you're almost like always disconnected and always connected. So where do you draw the line? Like, how are you able to negotiate those two?
Do you mean on a personal level? Is that when I'm not doing the work, you mean?
Yes.
So I do my 10,000 steps every day, but I can easily do 30 or 40,000 if I just keep going from the work. I have a digital notepad, it's called a Remarkables, that all of I still write every day. That's my space. Put my headphones on and I just take my time. I get up very early. I try and watch the dawn come up wherever I am, because it's always different. There's always a different energy to it. I'm very big into photography, just on a personal level. It's just stuff for me. But yeah, I can switch off just by being in a whole new place. And Today I was on the lakes, and that was just beautiful. I got up at 4:00 and I waited for the sun to come up. But in a couple of days, I'll be driving down to Sofia, which is the capital of Bulgaria, and I'll be in the city for a week. And I have all of the city bars and everything around me. And I think that's just kind of how I move things around in my own mind. And I feel comfortable in all of it. It's just my nature.
That's interesting. So it's almost like the variety keeps you kind of disconnected from. Yeah, interesting. It's funny that you bring up the remarkable. My husband has one, and he's like always talking about it.
Yeah. Once you've got one,
That's hilarious. Awesome. Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you, and this is also like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Digital Nomad Academy, it's free?
Yeah. So right now we're training our people completely for free. And the reason I want to do that is because I want it to be the best training I could possibly do. And I'm kind of at the stage where people are still saying, I didn't quite get this bit and I didn't quite get that bit. So then I'll go back and I'll just make every Wednesday I have a slot to redo videos and change those videos up and start moving those around. So that's kind of at the spot where I'm at. What it will be at some stage in the future will be a paid service, because we will be continuously supporting all of our nomads to be on the deal making space, to help them in the specific sectors and to make the introductions. These are high level deals, so there's plenty of money to come around. So the way that we will fund Executive Nomad and make sure that is the right supporting platform for them is to charge through a recurring income or recurring payment system. That's not there yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that especially maybe it's just with younger people or not, maybe it's just my perspective, but it seems like a lot of people will have this great idea and they'll really attempt to create a framework in which they're getting paid like immediately. And if they don't make revenue off it immediately, they kind of push it to the side. It's like, oh, that didn't work. So it's interesting. Yeah. I love that you're really embracing this trial period and doing it for free and making it really researched and making it so tailored that when you do offer it as a paid service, you have all the kinks like already ironed out and you know exactly what and who it will benefit. Yeah. I just think that's a really great.
Just on that, B, I think it's really important. You're exactly right about the young people. It's what I call the shiny toy thing. There's always something else to be going on to. And that's not really what I want. What I want is people who will come to the website and see lots and lots of training videos, lots of videos of me talking through stuff on the whiteboard and all the rest of me explaining how all of this works. Because what I don't want is people who sort of get half into it and then leave it for whatever reason. What I want is people to say, that actually really works because I want to move out of the corporate world, or because I'm stepping out from being in the military, or there's a certain sort of people who will just resonate with the story and say, look, this makes sense because I don't have a boss, because I don't need to invest into a huge franchise. This is something that we include the website that people will have. So this will actually set up a website. So everything that they have day one is there ready. It's already, they can start operating within days because they're not from a marketing background. I'm from a marketing background. So who should be writing the marketing material? It should be me, right? To give it to them and say, put this onto your website. This is our newest outreach program, our newest campaign. These are the results that we've just done on our testing. Now take it and do the same for you guys. So that's kind of where I am with it, to make it as simple as possible for as true as possible.
I was just going to ask that because I think it's a big transition for people. And I think it can be a bit, if not a lot, scary to kind of step out into this and leave the safety of the corporate world and that paycheck and all of that. So the fact that you're really laying that groundwork and just even having a website, I mean, that alone, I just rebranded and got my website up, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. And that alone takes a lot of time and copywriting and all of that. So the fact that you're doing it's a huge step up for people. And I think that's really great. What is next for you? You're doing the Executive Nomad Academy. You're traveling around. Like, what is the next big trip that you have planned?
In terms of the business, so I've never differentiated my travel to my work, to my holiday. It's always been a mix. It's always been so. I'm gonna head off to I'll be in Sofia next week for a few days, and then I'm heading to Cyprus, to Paphos in Cyprus, and everything comes with me. And that's what I envisage that the people who are right for this I mean, you mentioned the point it's scary. And yeah, of course it's scary, especially if you haven't been in the entrepreneurial world, especially if you've reached the point in life you go, maybe I've missed the boat on that entrepreneurial world. And I really don't think that's true. But what I do think is that it gets scarier because you have had that life of that paycheck. But I also know that as soon as you step outside of it and there's still a paycheck, and you're like, oh, actually, this is a good idea. Because all of the stress bits disappear. All of a sudden you're in control. But that's why this is just to qualify what you were saying a moment ago, is that one of the other things I think everybody should do who's interested in what we do is that they should try it first. Keep the paycheck, keep the job, do all of that, but run this alongside of it as long as you can do that stuff and you can transition over time. You wait until you've got a few deals under your belt. Wait until we'll help you to get the deals done. Wait until you get that bit. But then once you see yourself doing 2 or 3 or 4 deals over the next 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it is, then you know what you can do. Then everything else is fine. You know where money is. That's the first question, right? How do I keep financial stability if I'm moving out this job that I've had for 2 years or this corporate ladder or whatever it is? It sort of leads me into one of the other reasons why older people are better for this. It's not always, but often they have some sort of a cushion between that moving into the entrepreneurial world, out of the corporate world. They could do it tomorrow. If they don't, then stay in the corporate world, but do this in your learning in the evenings, get it rolling and so on. Because everything is online, so you do it in your own time. The only thing you have to accommodate is the meeting, the one-on-one meetings with potential clients. So I want to build up, getting back to the point, I want to build up Executive Nomad to be a brand, to be a community that I can just log in every day and see all of these people having a big old conversation about what's going on and where they've decided to go and do it. And there's a photo that my wife took yesterday of me doing the deal when I was in Greece and with the lake in the backdrop. And I said to her that I want that photograph because I want people to see it's just my phone on a tripod with my headphones in, with my remarkable pad, doing the deal, having the conversation, 6 people from 4 different countries on the call. I had a cappuccino in front of me. I was doing the deal. And you don't need to be that to have that corporate infrastructure. I'd really love to see a whole bunch of other people taking photographs and saying, this is where I did the deal today. I was at the Grand Canyon or I was skiing as we were doing last year. You know, that to me is kind of the vibe that I want. People with a bit of adventure is the right people for this.
Yeah. And I love it because that age bracket also, it's like the kids might be out of the house at that point and in college and you might have put the adventure spirit to the side for a bit to focus on that. And it's like, oh, empty nest syndrome sets in and all of that. And all of a sudden you have this opportunity to to be the 20-year-old influencer that your kids are talking about or whatever, but a little bit more strategic about it, or maybe a little bit just in your own way, like for your own demographic. Yeah. So I love that. Yeah, I love it. You brought up your wife, and I've been wondering this whole time. You travel around a lot. What does she do?
She travels with me, thankfully. I just got lucky there.
Thankfully.
So no, she travels with me, and she helps me in the business. And we've set up businesses in different countries. We set up a franchise company years and years ago in Spain, and she's always been involved in that. So we work together. We also have a lot of separate times. I usually go for my long walks and my trek on my own. She loves biking, mountain biking. She loves skiing. That's why we spend time in Bulgaria and ski. So yeah, I think it's a business you can run on your own, but it's also a great business.
I know. I'm just always curious because you mentioned her, and I think it sounds so fun, and it sounds like such a great way to nurture that partnership where it's like, let's do this crazy adventure together. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to bring up?
No, I think we've covered a lot, but I just think this, as a business, for your listeners, for your viewers, it goes back to that point that you said, because the guy in Greece that sort of was the catalyst for me actually saying, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to stop talking about something like Executive Nomad. I'm actually going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. His point was how scary it was to be in his early 50s and to step aside. I mean, he was an empty nester, all of those things that you mentioned. And his wife was as excited as he was. And I said to him, look, I'm not ready now. I said, I'll have something that I can give you guys a shout and say, look, go and have a look at this. And so I've already talked to people from ex-military. These are people who have been in the corporate world, in the military world, in the forces, where they've kind of been in a box that I've never been in. So I can't say I've had that experience other than very intimately. So it is scary to step out, but I've kind of with the academy, what I've done is I've worked out all the scary bits. It's mainly the technology. Well, it's mainly money, and then it's the technology, and then it's the same old question as everyone else. Where do I get clients? How do I get paid? So I've been working out how exactly that step by step to say, this is how you do it. This is how you get paid. This is the customer journey. This is where you find them on LinkedIn, on email. That's where they all are. You don't have to get too complicated about it. You don't have to have Instagram and TikTok because most of your clients are not there. These are founders. You can take your experience and whatever it is and say, I'm going to transition this experience and reposition myself and say, let's have these conversations. And the conversations are not difficult because I've worked out there's only really 25 questions that are over-asked on a deal call. So you just have to know how to answer those 25 questions. So what I do now is you go using we don't use Zoom, we use a thing called sessions. And that has the whole agenda down the side of the screen. So you just ask the questions as you go along. So eventually you don't even need that. I don't even have to reference them, of course, but I recognize the difficulties that people have, the emotional difficulty of saying, I have time for me to move along and start to do my own thing. I was really excited about that. And that's kind of where I started my journey putting this together. So what's stopping people to do this? And I'm sure I'm not there yet. I'm sure it's still going to take a while, but I'm getting to the point where I think I'll answer most of the questions. And that's just my experience, really.
But yeah, I think that's so valuable. And especially the how is so important. I feel like we hear a lot of people, I don't know if maybe it's personal development people, maybe it's just whoever, but I think there's this big thing about like, know your why, which is great, but it's also, you have to know how. Like once you get to your why, like, okay, I want to travel around and do this because I'm an empty nester or whatnot. Yeah. Also, how do I make that work? How do I get paid? Because if you aren't motivated by money, you still need it to live in the world. So it's so important. I love that you address that and in such a step-by-step way. The 25 questions is amazing because, and I'm sure through your years of experience, those come so naturally to you. And to be able to just impart that wisdom to other people who have all of these other skills, but aren't exactly sure how to translate it. It's amazing. I just think it's so amazing.
I think the challenge people coming out of the corporate world and the military world, but the challenge coming out of those frameworks is that as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to do your own marketing. You have to learn to do your own stuff. You have to learn to do all of these different things. Yes, you can bring freelancers in and all that stuff, but you do need to understand it first. Whereas in the corporate world, there was always someone over there who took care of marketing, somebody over there who took care of the client relations and so on. So you have to work out how to make all of that happen. And that can be scary because you just spend your whole career just working with somebody over there in marketing. Whereas the reality of it, if you break it down into a simplest form, it is all about relationships. It's who do you send that email to and how do you write that email? How do you position that so that they'll come back to you and say, oh, I'm interested in the conversation. That's tricky and it does take time. But that's why I'll write the email and then I'm saying, okay, everybody send this email out. This is what works. We're running some tests on this email. This is what we've seen. And so eventually people start to, hopefully, of course, start to build their own personality to it. It's not all about me. It's just, this is the platform. This is how you get going. But to have that platform and that place, that community of where you go, instead of having to go on Facebook and try to find a group that works for you, we'll have a built-in community. Everybody's in the same position. Everybody's in the same age group. Everybody's coming from the same variables, of course, but everybody's coming kind of from the same space and going to the same space. So all of the questions become relevant. And I think that's a community that I couldn't find, as far as I can see, doesn't exist. Of course, there's Facebook and all that kind of stuff, but what I meant was very specific. So I've got a question about a call that I've got onto later on today. Can somebody help me with that? That's kind of where I think that there is a nice crossover from the corporate to the entrepreneurial.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And just to have that community, that built-in community of after spending decades mastering your skill and mastering your, profession, to be able to go out and be the entrepreneur with that like safety net of I have this built-in community. If I need to, I can reach out to Jamie for some marketing advice and kind of take it and whirl it through and spit it out through my own personality kind of. So it's so great. Exactly, and I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's such an interesting and I think necessary at this point. It's funny because right before we got on the call, I told you my parents are in Greece right now and they traveled a bit when I was growing up and all of that. But now, like since right before COVID and then now after COVID, that's when they really started. It was the first time my dad had been to Europe and we're of French background, and he always wanted to go to France. And he didn't get to do that until he was like in his 60s. And it's so fun to watch them. Like they're there for like 3 weeks. And if I can send this out to all of my community and impact anybody, you know, I hope that people sign up and take advantage of the third act of their life in the most adventurous way. I think
absolutely.
It's so great. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I have a quick like rapid fire kind of section for you. So what is the best career advice you've ever been given?
Keep learning. Actually, also my granddad said he said always keep learning. And I do.
And what is the best, it might be the same, but what is the best just general life advice?
Oh gosh, absolutely follow your heart. It was so easy for me to have ended up in the corporate world. I knew that wasn't the right place for me. I knew that. And that doesn't have to be when you're 20. That can be when you're 50 and 60. Where is it you want to be? And be ready to make a change. Be ready to make a change as well.
Yeah.
Just grab it.
Yeah. Be ready to make a change. It's a good one. Okay. And the guy who has traveled the world and been to everywhere, what is the number one travel hack for people that you can tell us? Travel
light. I travel incredibly light. My attitude has always been, as long as I travel light, as long as I've got a credit card with me or a cash card with me, I'll be fine. Everything else can stem from that if I get to travel, if I'm anywhere. So yeah, travel light. It's not just bad quality, that's in life as well. You know, you don't need too much. This way, it's a lovely life. I just disappear. If I want to go, I'll jump on the train. I decided in an hour recently, I got the night train to Istanbul because I just decided that's what I wanted to do. I saw it online. So I jumped on the bus, went to Sofia and took the night train to Istanbul. That's a lovely way to be. And my business is with me. I have cool things to say.
Yeah, amazing. I one of my best friends is from Turkey, and we've talked about it a lot. We're like, we have to go together. Like, I'm like, I need you to show me around. I want to go to Istanbul so bad. And she's like, yeah, it's amazing.
It's astonishing. It's an astonishing city.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many people in one place in my entire life. And I've really. Yeah.
Really?
It's so busy. I love it up in Australia. The energy is amazing there.
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems, and so ancient. Just there's so much history and culture. Yeah. Jamie, you've been so generous with your time and your knowledge and your wisdom and your stories. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share everything that you've shared with us. And please keep an eye out for Executive Nomad Academy. If you're over 40 and looking for some adventure, check it out. We will include everything in the show notes. Jamie, is there anything else you would like to say to the listeners?
Yeah, grab it. If it's time to change, that's when you focus. It's like what you get. Just grab it. Just do it. Just grab life. You only got one, so grab it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for your precious time and energy. And if anything resonated with you, please feel free to share with a friend and subscribe. If you're interested in career coaching, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Courtney@resume-careers.com and follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page. Thank you so much and see you next week.